In this video, I'm giving you 20 Roblox Studio tips. That way when you leave this video, you are a master at making Roblox games. And if you so happen to know a tip already, I put chapters in the description so you can easily skip ahead to the next tip. I hate long intros, so let's just dive right into the video. With tip number 1, you can quickly put holes in your parts using the union tool. Let's say you want to make this into a donut shape. Let's make another part intersecting the object where you want the hole to be, then go to the Model tab, select the Negate button, highlight both parts, then hit Union, and you've got yourself a donut. Tip number 2 is to equally space out objects using a larger grid sizing. Let's say you have an object like this pillar and you want to make multiples spaced apart equally. The fastest way to do this, head to the Model tab, ensure the Move Grid is enabled, and set the grid size to 10 pixels. Now when you duplicate the object and move it, it will snap every 10 pixels instead of 1, making it easier to space them evenly, which leads us to our next tip. Tip number 3, you can comment out multiple lines in one click. All you need to do is highlight and type Ctrl/, or Command / if you're on Mac. It will insert a multi-line comment around the highlighted code. If you want to uncomment these lines, just do the same thing again. Tip number 4 is to use the built-in tool keybinds. Often if you're making a scene, you need to switch between moving an object, resizing it, rotating, and selecting a new one. It can get pretty tedious to keep moving your mouse all the way up to the top and selecting what you want. So these tools are actually keybinded to the numbers on your keyboard. Hit 1 to use the Select tool, 2 for the Move tool, 3 for Scale, and 4 for Rotate. Tip number 5 is that you should test for different screen sizes using the device emulator. Head to the Test tab and click Device. Here you'll be able to choose from a number of preset devices. If your game supports mobile, I recommend designing your interface for mobile first. Mobile players usually have the least screen space, so if it looks good on a phone, it will likely look good on a computer, provided you follow tip number 6, which is to use scale instead of offset for size. When designing UI, the default for Roblox Studio is to work in pixels. This is fine if your experience only supports computer users, but if you want to reach more players and take advantage of Roblox's multi-platform support, you'll need to support more screen sizes for which your designed elements may not fit. You can switch to scaling a UI element by giving it a decimal value for precision and size, instead of a value over 1. Roblox Studio will recognize it as a scaled size, and your UI will look 10 times better on mobile. Tip number 7 is that you can scale items equally on both sides at the same time. This can help make symmetrical objects much quicker to build, and all you need to do is hold Control while scaling the item, hold Command if you're on Mac. Tip number 8 is that you can find every instance of a word, variable, or code snippet throughout your code instantly. All you need to do is hit Command F and type in what you want to find. Tip number 9 is that you can use these down arrows on the search and replace every instance of that word with something else. Just type in that something else and hit this button, and every instance is replaced. Tip number 10, if you haven't yet used plugins, this may be the most important tip for you. Plugins are modifications you can add to Roblox Studio built by other developers. Each plugin does a different thing, but they are all designed by one principle: to make it faster and easier to make a Roblox game. Check out available plugins on create.roblox.com or directly in Roblox Studio. Just open the Toolbox and select plugins from this dropdown. I'm going to do a deep dive on the best Roblox Studio plugins coming soon to my channel. Make sure you subscribe. You won't want to miss that if you're building a Roblox game. Tip number 11, use aspect ratio constraints when making a UI. If you followed tip number 6, your UI will look good on mobile devices, but due to varying screen dimensions, a button that you expected to be square may not quite look right on some devices, which is why it's always advisable to use UI aspect ratio constraints when building UI. Just add them with the plus icon and set the ratio you want your button to have. For a square, it's 1. Tip number 12 is another UI tip. You can make your UI look softer and more appealing with rounded corners. Just add a UI corner element and set the radius as a percentage of the size of your button. And now your UIs will be looking better in no time. Tip number 13. Selecting multiple parts can be done by dragging your cursor, but what if you want to select multiple objects and not the one in between them? All you have to do is hold Shift and click on each part you want to select. Tip number 14. If you want to combine two parts, you can quickly do that using the Union tool. Just select both parts, go to the Model tab, click Union, and now they can move and be scaled as one part. Tip number 15, if you're rotating an object and want finer control, just hold Shift while you rotate it and you won't snap to the default positions. This works when you're moving objects as well and you want to put it in between grid sizes. And of course it works for scaling. Tip 16 is to keep your code organized using functions. Functions are sections of code that you can run on command. You can do that by typing local function, function name, then putting a pair of brackets. Any code you put in here will be run when you call the function. Let's say we want to print a message. Now we can call the function by writing its name, followed by a pair of brackets. Now when we start the game and open the output, we can see that it printed our message. Tip number 17 is that you can have even more customization of functions by putting what are called parameters in between these brackets. Then you can print out different messages using the same function. To call the function, keep the syntax the same but put the parameter in between the brackets. Tip number 18 is that you can use the Toolbox to find not just models for your game, but also audios, fonts, and of course plugins. Just use this drop down. Tip number 19 is to use the script analysis system to help you debug your scripts. You can enable it in the View tab, and it automatically checks your work as you make it. Tip number 20, I think, is the most important tip because if you have dreams of being a Roblox developer as your job, just like I do, then you probably want that because you think it's going to be a fun job, which it is. But sometimes hard things are hard, and just try to remember, if you can't have fun in the moment, have Type 2 fun, which is stuff that is fun to look back on. Thanks for watching, subscribe if you're new here, my name is Blueberry Boy, I'll see you in the next one.